right now, and we're gonna make a bouncing ball first today. Okay. So first thing we want to do is delete the cat sprite. We can do that down here. And I'm just gonna add a ball. Any ball you can find in there. If you search under ball, there'll be lots. I might do this like funny looking tennis ball actually. I like the look of this one. So there he is there. And he's gonna have his own code where he'll have when clicked, obviously. Probably want to start him in the middle of the screen. So I'm just gonna kind of drag him to the middle somewhere. And then I'm going to use this command that says go to. What that'll do is if I ever get dragged off when I start my program, it puts him back to that one spot, which is good. You could actually probably do 0, 0. I think the screen is 640 by 320, so that's actually the dead middle, I believe. And if you look at the costume, you'll see that it's, let me zoom out there a little bit. Yeah, it's right in the middle of the costume, which is perfect. Okay, cool. So let's get this thing to bounce. There's lots of ways to get it to bounce, but we want to actually get him to bounce by changing his X and Y position. So the first thing I'm going to put in here is this forever loop, and that's going to run forever, meaning it's always going to run. That's going to be where all the code for our Pong game is inside of here. And I think for now what we'll do is we will change X by 10 and change Y by 10. But 10's probably a little too much. Those are pixels on the screen, so we'll hit 5 and 5. And you'll see this ball scoot off into the corner and then get trapped. Watch this. Run it. He'll change his X by 5, so he'll keep going over 5 every frame, and he'll keep going up 5 every frame. So 30 times a second, he's going to change his X and Y by 5. There you go. And just gets trapped in the corner. If I run it again, you can see the ball moving, but he's getting trapped in the corner. So we're going to stop him from getting trapped in the corner. We're going to get him to bounce. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to make a variable that checks to see if he hits the top of the screen first. Okay. So what we want to do is we want an if statement in here where we're going to check if his X position, or let's see where he hits first. So this is an interesting debugging tool that we can use. If you go to the blue ones and you click on these variables here, which are already pre-made for us, every sprite will have an X and Y position. If you click on them, you can be able to see them here. Okay. So I'm going to stop my program as soon as he hits the wall, or try to, and then hopefully I'll get a good sense of where he was in his Y position. 160. Okay, not quite. 180. He's already past the wall. So I would say a good guess would be 170. There's 165. He's touching the wall exactly in the Y position. So I'm going to just check. If his Y position is ever bigger than 165, I want him to bounce. So that's not going to be too hard to do with an if statement. I'm just going to use the greater than, and I'm going to say if, and the variable for Y position is already made here. Y position is ever greater than 165. Your number might be different depending on the ball you chose, which is why I want you to put it on there and try to stop it. 180 is too much. There, 165 for me is where he hit the ball. Now I could also just grab this ball, I think, right here, and put it right up on the top and see what the exact position is. 165, 166. You can also do that. But that's good. So every time it gets bigger than 165, I want Y to turn into minus 5. Does that make sense? So it's going up by 5 every time. If it hits the top of the screen, I want this to change. So this number here should be a variable that I make. And I could just flip it back and forth between 5 and minus 5. So I'm going to make a variable. And I'm going to call it Y step. Like that. when I start my program, I'll set it to 5, so it's always set to go up. And if I put it in here as Y step, it's not going to change anything. It still sees it as 5. It's not going to bounce or do anything yet. I'm going to run it. And it hasn't done anything yet, but here I am going to set Y step to -5. And that should bounce it off the roof. Whoa, it worked. Check that out. Boom, the if statement's changed it. It's 5, 5, 5, 5, -5. Now it's going down. Okay, perfect. Now I need to see where the ball hits the edge of the screen. So to do that, I'm just going to drag mine over here to the edge. And I can see that it's around probably 225-ish. Mine says 226, but I'm going up by 5s. So here, I'll make another if statement to check if the x position is greater than. If, and for my variable, it's actually the blue one, x position is ever greater than 225, I need to change this number to -5. So this should also be a variable up in here. And I'm going to call that one x step. Make a variable x step. Like that. Okay. Always a very good habit to set your variables before your program, right when your program begins, so that you're expecting them to be 5 and not something random that maybe the computer has decided for you. I'm going to put that in there. Shouldn't really do anything yet. Shouldn't bounce off the sidewall because I didn't change it yet. But it sees it as 5. It's moving the ball by 5 because x step is 5. And now my condition, where if it ever gets bigger than 225, so if it ever touches the edge of the screen, just make sure that's the correct number again. Oh, it's still running. It's trapped there. So 225. If it's ever bigger than 225, I want to set x step to -5. And that should get it to bounce off of the left side of the screen. Boom, boom, and it works. I haven't put in an if statement for the left or the bottom of the screen or the left of the screen. But take a few minutes as an exercise and see if you can make those two if statements to make it bounce off the left and the right. You don't have to make any new variables or anything. All you have to do is make an if statement, check where the ball is going to hit for you. Looks like for me I'm -165 in the y and about -225 in the x. So it's actually the same numbers but just negatives. So try that out. Let's see if we can get that ball bouncing around the screen. So I've added 2 extra if statements here to make sure my ball is bouncing off the bottom and the left wall. Happy with that. I've also chose to turn it a little bit with a spin 5 degrees. Notice how when I run it, it's got this yellow line around it, so I know that that code is running. Okay. So that's it. Play with it. If you think that you could even leave yourself little messages. I'm pretty sure there's a way to do that. If you right click on, you can add comments to your code. You know, you could say like, this is my right wall, right? You can leave yourself little comments. We'll talk about maybe that later. Okay, so that's good. I'm happy with that. I got the ball bouncing. Now I want to add a paddle. So today I'm just going to add a paddle, and then I'm going to move them back and forth, and we'll worry about collision tomorrow probably. But let's add a sprite, but we'll paint it ourselves. So hopefully you can see me. Click down here. Oh, I don't want to add one of their pictures. I actually want to draw the thing, and I'll make mine purple is fine. There's a little square tool here that I can use, which is great. Should fill it in probably. It's going to outline it in black apparently, which I'm okay with as well. So this is going to be important that I actually, this is the origin, by the way, of this picture, the center dot. And that's going to be important for me to kind of anchor my paddle sprite. I want to start at this point. Okay, and if I draw that, I feel like that's probably a decent size for my paddle, and it does start at this origin. Okay, that origin is going to be important for us. First of all, the one important thing about the origin, if you found out with the fan code that we did, if you go to spin this thing, let's just say I want to spin this, it spins it around the origin, so it should spin it around this corner, and it does. You can see that. Okay. I'm just going to put it back, but if I had that origin somewhere kind of randomly when I went to go draw that picture, like, yep, go ahead, somewhere randomly, it would have spun it randomly around that point and done some weird things. So, okay, I'm too zoomed out here. All right, great. So, right now, I'm going to go back to the code for my paddle, and he has no code in there yet. But I'm going to add a code that says when clicked. I obviously want to just maybe start this paddle down at the bottom of the screen. Somewhere in the middle would be fine. I know the ball's going to bounce up. So I'm going to just put him there and then make a go to command. Go to. So now wherever this paddle starts, he'll always go back down there like that. And there are commands to get him to move. Some really easy ways to do that are under events, and you could say something like when right arrow pressed. It's probably the easiest way to get the paddle to move for now. I'll change his X position by 10. And maybe I'll make this 0. And maybe I'll make this minus 140. I like numbers that are divisible by 10. For maybe later on, we'll see why that's going to help us. But now if I press the right arrow, I can see the paddle moves to the right. And if I make a when left arrow pressed, I want to change the paddle's X position by minus 10. That'll move him left and right. So that'll be the start of what we should have today. It's just a paddle that's left and right, and that is working nicely. Tomorrow we'll try to tackle how we're going to figure out if the ball's hitting the paddle. There's a couple of ways to do it. But we're actually going to check. What we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to check if the ball is in between the left and right side of the paddle, and if the ball's Y position is touching or is less than the paddle's like Y position. So if it's between here and here and less than this, I'll know it's hitting, and then I'll just bounce it up. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do tomorrow. For now, if you want to add a cool background, you can always add cool backgrounds. You could even upload your own if you wanted to. Try to give the game a little bit of spice so it looks a little different. We'll be adding scores as well, maybe in the next day or so. There are sprites here that contain numbers, so like the number 1, you can see that. And it has costumes. We can make costumes so it has all the other numbers too. And we'll just change its costume when the score goes up. So we'll worry about that too later on. Try to get the ball bouncing around today. Get a paddle moving back and forth. That will be a good start. And I'll post this online.